Hello, welcome to our Unit 4 notes on amendments number 11 through 27. We spent some time recently talking about the first 10 amendments, which are collectively called the Bill of Rights. Now we're going to go through the remaining amendments that came after the Bill of Rights, and we currently have a total of 27 amendments, so today we're going to talk about basically Phase 2. Now, we talked earlier about the difficulty in passing a bill to becoming a law. It is even more difficult to get an amendment passed and added to the Constitution. They estimate that over the years, probably about 10,000 amendments have been proposed, and only 27 have made it. That's a pretty low rate there. Now, this is even more incredible when you think about in the last roughly 220 years or so, only 17 amendments have been added to the Constitution. So when you take out those first 10 amendments that were added almost immediately after the Constitution was ratified, you're talking about an average of only about one amendment added roughly about every 13 years or so. So it's a very difficult process. We won't spend a lot of time on the process today, but basically there are two methods by which you can add an amendment to the Constitution. One of them has been used to ratify or to add all 27 current amendments. The other method, Method 2, has never actually been used before to add an amendment. All right, so let's talk about Method 1. This is the one that has been used basically for every amendment, actually every amendment. What happens is an amendment is proposed by 2/3 of both houses of Congress, so it has to go into the Senate and the House of Representatives. And then once it's proposed and voted on with 2/3 in the House of both, then it goes to each state. And each state then holds an election, or not really an election, but a vote in their particular state. And then it's not ratified, or it doesn't become a constitutional amendment until it's been approved in 3/4 of the state. So a pretty tough road there when you got to get 2/3 of both houses. It's got to go to the states, and then you got to get 3/4 of the states before it becomes an amendment. Now, Method 2, the one that's never actually been used before, the first part is different. The second part's the same, but instead of going through Congress, a constitutional convention is proposed by 2/3 of the state legislatures. So it is possible to do this without Congress's approval, and that's kind of why they came up with this one. So if it's more of like a generated from the state perspective instead of Congress's perspective, you need 2/3 of the state legislatures to propose a convention, and then once it's written, then it goes to the states, and it has to be approved by 3/4 of the states at that point. So let's go ahead and talk about each of the remaining amendments, and you don't have to necessarily write down the date, but I did put the date on these slides so you kind of know when the amendment is ratified or added to the Constitution, but I'll give you kind of a brief summary of each of the amendments. Amendment 11, ratified in 1795, explains what must happen for a citizen of one state to sue another state. So at this time period, there were kind of still some issues about, jurisdiction of laws and stuff. So basically just an explanation or clarification if you want to sue somebody from another state. Amendment 12, this was ratified in 1804, and this happens as a result of kind of some crazy things happening in the electoral process. Remember we talked about earlier, one of the things that happened was the person that got the most electoral college votes was president. The person that got the second most electoral college votes was vice president, which would often result in people of different parties being president and vice president. So this just kind of clarifies and explains the process of how we elect the president. We still have the Constitutional Convention, just kind of tweaked a couple things. And like I said, one of the things was after this point, you're voting on a ticket. So you're voting for like the pair, president and vice president, and not just one person and then seeing who gets the runner-up and becoming vice president. So again, 12th Amendment ratified in 1804. Now the next three amendments, 13, 14, and 15, are often collectively called the Civil War Amendments because they come as a result of the Civil War. There's a lot of political change that happened as a result of the war. Probably one of the biggest changes was the fact that you had millions of people that were slaves suddenly becoming citizens of the United States. So let's take a look at these three Civil War amendments. And if you want to kind of like maybe bracket these on your note packet, you can kind of keep track of these as the Civil War amendments. All right, so Amendment 13 is ratified in 1865. And basically, the purpose for the 13th Amendment is to officially end slavery. Now, if you happen to get a chance to see the new movie that's out called Lincoln, Spielberg is the director of the movie. Very good movie. Basically talks about the process of how Lincoln is able to gain enough votes and support to pass the 13th Amendment. Fascinating movie. A little bit deep on political jargon and kind of keeping track of everything, but a really good look at specifically how Lincoln was able to get the 13th Amendment passed in 1865. The second of the Civil War amendments, the 14th Amendment, was ratified in 1868, and this describes the civil rights of each citizen. Basically, this takes away the 3/5 compromise and basically just clarifies that slaves, or people that were slaves, now have full citizenship rights. There's a lot of things that happened after the Civil War where, in some cases, things might be written down on paper as far as the rights of a citizen, but people kind of manipulate it a little bit. So this is kind of a clarification that describes the civil rights of every citizen, largely as a result of how African Americans were being treated after the Civil War. Now, the last Civil War amendment, the 15th Amendment, is ratified in 1870, and even though African Americans were given the right to vote, there were still a lot of things that were happening in the South that was preventing African Americans from voting. So the 15th Amendment clearly states that race cannot be a qualification for voting. So there's no way that you can have little things in the voting rules that made it almost impossible for African Americans to vote. So all kinds of things were tried in various parts of the South. They would have literacy tests. They would have different kinds of poll taxes where you had to pay a tax to vote. There were all kinds of hurdles set up to try and prevent African Americans from voting. 15th Amendment clearly states that that cannot be a qualification. Race cannot be a qualification in any way, shape, or form to vote. All right, 16th Amendment, a little bit of time has passed here. This is ratified in 1913, and this creates the federal income tax. So at this point, it's an amendment that the federal government can create an income tax for the citizens of the United States. Now, this does not impact state income tax. That is a power given to the states. This creates the federal income tax. And as we mentioned a little bit the other day, just kind of interest here, you don't have to jot this down, but there are some states that have no income tax whatsoever. Alaska, Florida, Nevada, South Dakota, Texas, Washington, and Wyoming have no state income tax. So if you live in those states, you would still pay a federal income tax. But for example, like here in Missouri, we pay a federal income tax and a separate state income tax. So just kind of something of interest there. All right, the 17th Amendment, ratified in 1913 as well. This describes the election of senators to Congress. The way that we currently elect senators is we, as the people, vote for who's going to represent our state. So, for example, we just had an election, and Claire McCaskill was elected as the senator from Missouri. Up until this point, though, what happened in most states was the state legislature selected somebody to then represent the state as a senator. So the 17th Amendment gives this power back to the people directly and doesn't leave it up to the state legislatures to choose. All right, so this is a really interesting amendment. The 18th Amendment is ratified in 1919, and this bans the manufacture, sale, or transportation of any alcohol in the United States. There was a big movement that kind of blamed a lot of the social ills in the United States on drinking, and so they gained enough momentum to pass an amendment that says that you can't manufacture it, you can't sell it, you can't transport alcohol. But what typically happened once Prohibition started, this is called Prohibition, is that people still continued to drink alcohol, they still continued to make alcohol, but it was no longer legal, so the people that began to control alcohol were organized crime bosses. So people were still making money off of alcohol and people were still using it, but now instead of people legally making a profit off of it, it was all going towards organized crime. And organized crime was now able to use that money then to become even more powerful. So as of 1919, the 18th Amendment says you can't manufacture, sell, or transport alcohol, but we'll get back to this amendment a little bit later. All right, the 19th Amendment, ratified in 1920. finally gives women the right to vote in elections. Now, some individual states had given women the right to vote previous to this. For example, Wyoming was the first state to give women the right to vote, and they did so quite a bit earlier. But this officially makes it an amendment that across the United States, women are given the right to vote in elections. So this one always kind of amazes me that it took until 1920 for women to gain the right to vote. So that is the 19th Amendment. The 20th Amendment is ratified in 1933. This describes the process between the election and when the new president officially takes office. So we're currently in that time period right now. So we voted in the general election for the president, but now we have to wait for the official inauguration day when the president is sworn in. And they used to have it as a fairly long period of time. I believe at one point it was like maybe like 4 or 5 months in between the election and the actual inauguration, because people had to travel by horses. If you're in Georgia and you had to travel up to Washington, D.C., that would take quite a while. But in 1933, they decided, well, that's not really a major reason to have it so delayed. So there's still that time period between the election and the inauguration, but the 20th Amendment kind of like shrunk it down a little bit. So we'll experience that a little bit once we come back from Christmas break, and they'll have the inauguration and that kind of stuff. Also, the 20th Amendment does kind of detail a little bit about the order of succession. So there was never really like an official plan for what happens if the president is assassinated, or what happens if the president is not even assassinated, but maybe just like injured, or maybe has a stroke or isn't able to make decisions. They didn't really have a specific order. They kind of just always went by, oh, the vice president's going to take over, but they didn't have a lot of plans after that officially. And people started to kind of get worried, well, what happens if the president and vice president, for example, God forsake, were killed in an accident or something? We had to have some kind of plan for who would then take over as president. Otherwise, it would create chaos. And if you're a country that wanted to, for example, attack the United States, we don't want to have any indecision when, we don't know who's in control or who's in power as far as the president. So we wanted to clarify that. So what they created as a result of this was what they call an order of succession. And this is our current one right now. Just pulled it up the other day and put it on the slide here. So if the president would be incapacitated, then the vice president obviously takes over. But then the person after that would be the Speaker of the House. And if you look at this slide, it's kind of interesting because you can tell on the top here, there's a key. All the blue are Democrats, red are Republican, independents are in gray there. So like the second person in the order of succession is actually Republican. Boehner is the Speaker of the House. Most people on this list, of course, are Democrats. This is the president's cabinet. So the president was able to select these people. And typically when you select a cabinet, you pick people that are of the same political party as you. Obama did pick some people from the Republican Party to be on his cabinet, kind of as a show of goodwill. So this shows you the order all the way down to number 17 as far as who would take over if something would happen to the people above them on the list. Now, one kind of interesting thing, when the president gives his State of the Union address, that's the one time during the year when typically all of these people would be in the same location. But the next time you watch the State of the Union address, pay close attention, because they have a law that says that all of these people cannot be in the same place at the same time. So, for example, if something would happen in the Capitol building while the president's giving a State of the Union address and all of these people are in the building, then there would be nobody left if there was like a bomb or something and everybody was killed. So they kind of rotate it, and they typically say it when the president is coming into the chamber, but there's always one person that's held out and is at a undisclosed location far away from the Capitol, so that if something would happen to everybody in the Capitol, there would be still somebody on this list, and they would take over as president of the United States. So kind of a little bit of a little trivia fact there. But the next time the president gives a State of the Union, go ahead and try and listen for that. All right, so we talked about the Prohibition Amendment earlier. Well, in 1933, they decided that this was not going very well, so they decided to basically erase the 18th Amendment with the 21st Amendment. So this ended the prohibition of alcohol in the United States. So again, this amendment doesn't really do anything other than wipe out a previous amendment. Now, a lot of times students will say, well, why don't we just totally erase the 18th Amendment and make the 19th Amendment the 18th Amendment, the 20th Amendment the 19th Amendment? Well, that would be pretty confusing. So the 18th Amendment is still an amendment, but it's basically just been voided. So a lot of times when you see it in a book or a textbook, if you look at it online, for example, they'll have the text of the 18th Amendment, but there'll be a line through it, meaning that it's been basically erased. It's been null and void. So that's the 21st Amendment. 22nd Amendment happens in 1951, and this limits a president to 2 consecutive terms of office. We've talked about this a little bit, but George Washington served 2 terms of office and then stepped down, and that became the precedent for a while. It wasn't technically a law, but it was just kind of established that people would not serve longer than 2 terms of office. And then we had President FDR. And when FDR came into office, he was elected to 4 consecutive terms. So this was in the 1930s and 1940s. So people started to wonder, gosh, should we maybe have a limit so that we don't have somebody potentially running, and being reelected 4, 5, 6 times? And so this amendment was directly a result of FDR's presidency. Not that people were upset about it, but they thought that maybe we should have, a little bit more structure to the 2 consecutive term idea. So that's that amendment. 23rd Amendment is ratified in 1961, and this gives the District of Columbia 3 electoral college votes. And we talked about this with the Electoral College, but up until 1961, you could live in our nation's capital and still not have a vote for President of the United States. So pretty incredible. They changed this. The District of Columbia is not a state. All right. They did not make it a state or anything. They just basically said, we're going to give you 3 electoral college votes, just like we give Montana or North Dakota or any other state that has 3 electoral college votes. All right. 24th Amendment's ratified in 1964. This makes any tax to vote, or what's called a poll tax, illegal. So there were still some kind of things lingering in primarily the South, where there were little taxes being placed on voting, and they don't want to have any attachment to paying a fee to be able to vote. And so this basically clarifies no poll tax in any way, shape, or form when people vote. So this was ratified in 1964. The 25th Amendment sets up the process for replacing the president in case there's a death or illness. So this clarified, and this comes in 1967, this clarifies what happens if, for example, the president is not killed, but the president has an accident, has a fall, for example, and has a head injury. How would we determine that the president is well enough to be president, or how would we determine that the president has lost enough mental capacity that somebody else should take over? So there's a very detailed order of events of what has to happen if there's a challenge to the president's ability to rule and things like that. But basically this is set up with the 25th Amendment. 26th Amendment is really kind of the last big amendment that we've had passed. This was ratified in 1971, and this lowers the voting age in the United States from 21 down to 18. So beginning in 1971, if you are 18 or older, you're able to vote in general elections. Now, I don't want to make myself sound too old here, but this was ratified the same year that I was born. So it's been a while since we've had kind of a significant amendment. We do have one more amendment to talk about, the 27th Amendment, but that was kind of a formality. This is really kind of the last big amendment that's been added to the Constitution. The 27th Amendment was ratified in 1992, and basically it says that any increase in pay for legislators must take place after an election. Now, this passed just kind of really easily. It was something that was actually proposed by the Founding Fathers. It never got passed officially, so they just decided to go ahead and pass it. It just kind of like a common sense type thing. So it is an amendment, but it's an amendment that really didn't have a lot of opposition and just kind of happened under the radar kind of. So the last real significant amendment would be the 26th, but we do have the 27th Amendment that happened in 1992. So there you have the amendments, number 11 through 27. A lot of different things accomplished with those different amendments, but again, hopefully one of the main things we got across there was the difficulty with which it takes to actually get an amendment to the Constitution. Same type of idea as far as the law. We don't want people to just easily be able to add on to the Constitution because once you add something to the Constitution, it's very difficult to remove it. So it took a long time to remove the Prohibition Amendment. And so we want to make it difficult. We want to make it something people talk about. We want to make it, a process so that we don't end up with just a littering of the Constitution. So if you have any questions about any of these amendments, please let me know. But that is amendments number 11 through 27. All right. Thanks.